This episode is sponsored by Bigger City. Thank you so much for supporting us and helping our show to grow.
And welcome to the Big Fat Gay Podcast, where we love to talk about the things that are weighing on our minds. My name's Don Marshall. I'm a big chubby guy living here in not so sunny Hollywood, and today I am a very, very wet boy sitting underneath an atmospheric river, bringing gallons and gallons of water to California. It's lovely.
Hello, my name is Dan Oliverio, author, public speaker, and chubby chaser. And yes, atmospheric river wider than a mile. I'm crossing it in style someday.
Oh, but doing it like George Washington style.
No, I'm Trevor Keyson. I'm a super chub, and I've gone from the ocean to the atmospheric river. I was on a ship. I'm on land, but it's still wet, and I'm just a little soggy today.
And my name is Michael Willer. I'm a chubby chaser, and I'm not there. I'm not so soaked. I'm more damp. It's just sort of drizzling here. It's not too bad. I'm appreciating the variation in weather because usually it's just sort of blue skies all the time.
Yeah, Dan, Trevor, don't think it has escaped our notice that you guys come back from the ocean and you bring it with you. Like,
it followed me home.
Hello, dear listeners. Thanks for coming back. We want to thank all of our wonderful sponsors and affiliates over at Big Fig and Bigger City. Thank you so much for helping us stick around. Thank you to our Patreons for helping to keep the show rolling. And we have all sorts of special treats for you up on our Patreon page, including a new Chaser chat coming out in the near future.
That's right, boys.
We're going to be recording it in like 6 days. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be an in-person extravaganza, including the recording of our Valentine's episode, which this episode will go live about 4 days before we record our Valentine's episode. So if you listen within those days and you want to submit your questions about
last call for questions, boys.
This is your last opportunity. We have gotten some great ones, so it's we've got plenty to go on, but we could always go for more.
And just a reminder, we're looking for questions about chub chaser relationships or representation or things you do in bed, things not to do in bed. How come that keeps happening in bed? Because it's Valentine's Day, which apparently is celebrated horizontally.
Stories are fun too. If you want to just share an experience, it doesn't have to be a question. Okay. Holy crap. That was maybe the most professional intro we've had in like a year. We just whizzed right through it. All right, let's do it.
And on to pop culture, folks.
I'm doing some soft shoe.
How soft are your shoes?
I love it when we get to start off our pop culture sections with Kotaku.
Yes.
News from the video game world.
With racism and stereotypes.
Yeah. All right. So boys, you're really going to have to slow this down and explain it to me because I'm so confused because I know nothing.
So let's start with the headline. Fortnite, which is a video game, is currently filled with racist AI generated art. Yeah, Fortnite is an online game, multiplayer, so anyone from across the world can play with each other. And they have creator modes where users can create their own content. They can create their own maps. They can create and they can generate their own art and upload them to kind of describe what the map is meant to be. And Kotaku has gathered a bunch of these different maps. They said they found about 120 of them, where the representative art for it is some variation of a fat and or racistly stereotyped character representing the type of location you're supposed to be playing in. So, there might be a very fat, Mexican man in a sombrero for that type of environment. Of course, you can imagine it gets worse than that.
Yeah. Also, the names, they describe some of them. It's like Arab Zone Wars, Nigerian Zone Wars, China Zone Wars.
But Zone Wars is like a thing of the game, right? It's like everything is a zone.
Yeah, Zone Wars means it's a zone.
It's a play space. It's a map. That you can, And I guess the story here is more, I mean, of course, this is happening because it's user generated content. So users are going to be, as terrible and varied as actual people are. And yet the creator of the video game, the people who own it and curate the content, Epic, hasn't done anything about it yet, even though it's been reported to them and posted about publicly and talked about. When Kotaku reached out to them directly, they sort of quoted their anti-discrimination policies back to them with some boilerplate text, and also said, we personally vet all of the user-generated content, which means they approve.
Yeah, which means they approved all of this stuff.
Yes. And couldn't possibly be true. There's no way they can monitor every user posting stuff.
No, but they can monitor all the maps that people upload.
I think they use
their
AI.
Yes, exactly. I was going to say,
yeah.
I'm sure their AI is like, yes, this AI content is fine. So I like that this art, because I saw this and I like that they're acknowledging that this is racist and also fatphobic.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to I've been thinking what is really the point of making these things? And I think it is just to get people, it's clickbait, rage clickbait, to get people to click on the maps. And if that pushes it up in the algorithm or whatever.
Well, they did point out that most of these maps are not well visited. They aren't engaged with, but some of them are. And one in particular had a sort of, stereotypically racistly Jamaican theme, which it does have a lot of players, up to 2,000 at a given moment. So by and large, they aren't getting that much attention. It's more the fact that so many of them exist and haven't been, taken down yet.
Well, I thought their investigation of it was actually pretty interesting. The Jamaican character you're talking about was sort of attributed as being the first of that generation. And the success of that map was one of the reasons why they think the fat character became a thing.
Right.
Can you help me understand what was, because it looked like a fat guy in a Rasta hat. So I don't get, what was the objection?
In that case, I think it was more stereotyping than out and out racism. But there are others where the same design of the fat guy on a different map is holding a giant chicken wing, fried chicken wing.
Yeah.
And that's where you start to get into racist stereotypes and not just
They have a small sample of the images on the article. And I actually found the racism of it much more shocking than the fat phobia. Some of them were clearly fat phobic to me, but some of them were just no, that's just a fat character.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think any of them are meant to uplift fat people.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the goal of any of these images.
No.
It's in the comments, and I don't recommend you dive into the comments on this article. I mean, there is some discussion going on that's of reasonable quality, but several people, a not insubstantial number of people, were basically chiming in and saying, I didn't realize these were racist stereotypes. Which doesn't necessarily excuse it, but I think there is just straight up ignorance at play.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's they saw the success of this one AI generated, Jamaican looking map, and they jumped on that bandwagon.
I feel like a lot of this Fortnite is a world famous game, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of this content is going to be produced by non-American people who in countries where racial awareness has not begun yet,
Or just the stereotypes aren't known. That's partially what I meant, is it's just ignorance in some cases.
Yeah. And that's not to excuse it, but it is to acknowledge the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, the one you're talking, the kind of top comment that is the most I didn't realize this was offensive. I was curious, is this person, where did they live? Because
I was wondering that too. And to point, I guess, a slightly more positive light on it, that comment has 14 kind of, stars. Somebody said, yes, I agree with whoever wrote this. And the response explaining what those stereotypes are and why they're not acceptable has 64.
Yeah.
So clearly, I think the balance there is at least somewhat enlightened.
It's been interesting to kind of fat AI stuff since we first talked about it. Because
fat AI.
The way and rate it has accelerated at has just been so wild to like the, when we were first talking about it, it was these just such crude, like not even barely human looking things.
Yeah, it was very smeared.
And there's all these, quote unquote AI artists making, the kind of like Bear AI stuff, Chub Chaser AI stuff, Gainer AI stuff, and how much better it's gotten. A lot of it is still very janky and like body horror, like malformed, but it's concerning, and seeing how much people are just completely embracing it is also troubling.
I also think, though, it's starting to get played out. I actually am seeing less of it. I mean, to a degree, because I think there is a backlash to it. I think when people, the AI creators put out like 100 images a day, I just think it becomes, it just bankrupts itself.
Anyway, on a more positive note, we have an article at USA Today.
Hold on.
Talking about,
is it positive?
Well, it sounds like you're going to have a good discussion.
Yes. I think it's an attempt to move in a positive direction.
I think this is it's something if ever there were one.
Yes, it's something. Yeah, it's something.
They are not trying to help fat people. They're trying to help people with obesity. And this is number 2, Obesity Care has released the Obesity Bill of Rights.
The first of which, just to set the tone here, the first of which is, number 1, the right to accurate, clear, trusted, and accessible information on obesity as a treatable chronic disease.
Yes. And there begins my problem.
Right.
And that's the first problem. There's such a series of premises. What it's really designed to do, these are eight rights. But what it's really designed to do, and what the backers have designed it to do, is to eliminate the prejudice and mistreatment and disrespect that fat people face in getting prescribed weight loss medication.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is the line they are trying to get down. So that you should
therefore
never
treating the disease.
The prejudice of your doctor against fat people should never get in the way of your getting a prescription for Wegovy. That's how this is really moving.
The article interviews Patty Nice, who they really do detail kind of the bias and hatred she has received as a fat person throughout her entire life, the medical mistreatment, the neglect, misdiagnoses, ignoring issues. And I do feel for her. I do think it's like, I think this is important, but it's the wrong way, kind of like, one of our first episodes when we talked about Washington State, making obesity a disability to give protections to people. And that was the first, it's something. This is very much an it's something. But the kind of like Russian nesting dolls of, there's the right to obesity care, which is connected to the National Consumers League and the National Council on Aging, which I think is connected to other organizations, which this is all money from drug companies. And it is similar to the campaign, the It's Larger Than Me, which was funded by Novo Nordisk, telling doctors to treat fat people with respect so they'll come to you to lose weight.
And get this medicine. Yeah.
If you read all of their, I think there are 8 of them, all 8 of their rights, every single one, with the possible exception of number 5, but not really, is centered around those obese people seeking the medical care to treat the obesity.
That's right.
Yes.
All of them. Yeah. It's not just, you need to respect people of all weights and sizes. It's very much these obese people have the right to seek out the medical care to treat their obesity. And it's just different wordings of that same idea.
Did you have something, Don? I feel like you...
Yeah, I think I interpreted this differently than you guys, where like, I get what you're saying, and I don't disagree. This is clearly, here are some methods to improve people's access to Wegovy. But when you go down the list, some of these things are just common sense shit that we should be getting, right?
Yeah, it really
right to accurate, clear, trusted, and accessible information on obesity as a treatable chronic disease. I don't agree with that final part of the sentence, but give me clear information that is accurate to my situation. And if that accurate information is you are not in danger of dropping dead tomorrow, you're fine, say that. Accurate information is accurate information.
Yeah. So really, Don, let's unpack that, because I think what you put your finger on there is it opens up a Pandora's box of what's wrong here. And it's this idea that, as a fat person, you're entitled to respect and accurate medical information. I'm sorry, isn't everybody on the planet entitled to that? That is such a basic thing, but it is an acknowledgement that as a fat person, you probably won't get that.
Yeah.
That's number one. And then number two, as you point out, the problem is, and so accurate information about what? About getting you treated for your body size.
Yeah. And that's the problem I have with that. But if this is going to lead into a more comprehensive, truthful, accurate assessment of obesity issues in your life, including you don't have any, you're fine, then that's what I'm trying to get behind.
Which it should. And but the problem I think that we haven't really touched on yet is that they are intending for this to be a resource for medical care providers to reference when treating their fat patients.
Yes.
And if this is your only point of reference, the only way that you're going to see the interaction is treat the obesity.
I can't disagree with that. The way this is phrased right now, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, so they interview Patty Neese, who is the former chair of the Obesity Action Council, which is kind of like, I was talking about this before we were recording. If you're familiar with DC Comics, there's the Crime Syndicate, which is like a parallel Earth evil version of the Justice League. To me, the Obesity Action Council is like the parallel NAFA, where it's like, well, we care about obese people and people with obesity because they need help in not being people with obesity. Like, it's just so like, when I saw this, the fact that it was the Obesity Bill of Rights, I'm like, red flag number one. And when they talk about people with obesity, it's like, okay, red flag number two. I think it's hard because, fat people are just trying to find resources to help them deal with medical discrimination. And I think it is like hard to see the thoughts and actions, because I know so many people who are at different places in kind of like fat rights journey stuff. And a lot of people not knowing that obesity is like kind of the problematic nature of it, especially in fat liberation spaces. So like, it's just so frustrating and icky. And I'm going to hand it over to Michael because he has his little hand raised. And
well, I liked the comparison with NAFA, because in this article, in the USA Today article, Tigris Osborne, who's the board chair for NAFA,
executive director.
Ooh.
They mislabeled her title. Then that's what they said, board chair. Anyway, executive director of NAFA points out, she mentions this feels like astroturfing, which is going to great efforts to hide the true sponsors of a message. And as the article points out, many of the organizations supporting the bill are backed by drug companies that make weight loss medications. So this is something in the actual, this is not just us like taking wild guesses.
Yes.
And she suggests that if you care about the health of fat people, you have to care about all of the health of fat people and not just the fat. Which currently, which by the way is never the problem. Like you don't actually die. You don't actually die of having too much body fat. It's never that.
They do pay lip service to that on number 5 here. Like number 5 is that exactly.
That's why number 5, the fifth bill or the fifth right in their bill, is the only one that to me could be taken kind of, but one.
Why don't you read it? Why don't you read it so people know?
Okay, number 5, the right to person-centered care that is personalized, respects the individual's cultural beliefs, meets their specific health goals, and considers the person's whole health and not just their weight status. I don't have any objections to how that's written. It's more the fact that it's buried at number 5 and it's only 1 out of 8 that actually says anything like that.
that should be number one.
That should be number one. And see, because here's the thing that gets me. The biggest instance, or I'd say the gravest instance of medical malpractice with fat people is someone has scoliosis and therefore has back problems, but they're diagnosed with fat. Someone has cancer and has pain, has problems focusing, but they're diagnosed as fat. That number 5 that you just read comes close, but it is the weakest of interventions to like look at how would you treat me if I were a thin person? How would you treat me if you ignored my weight and focused on the actual medical problem?
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's one of the things this is what I find most interesting about it. If you read this list, the list we've got basically has the first half of each entry made in bold, right? And then a less bolded follow-up to the paragraph. The bolded portion is always it's something no one would argue with that everyone deserves, right? So number 1, the right to accurate, clear, trusted, and accessible information. Who can disagree with that?
Right.
And then the second half, all of a sudden it narrows the scope of that. It's on obesity, but not obesity. It's on obesity as a treatable chronic disease.
Yes.
Right.
So that's my problem there.
Which is actually factually controversial. Talking about obesity as a treatable disease is one of the most controversial things you can say about being fat.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's an interesting article. It's something definitely worth talking about.
Trevor shared there is a NAFA version of the Fat Bill of Rights.
NAFA's Healthcare Bill of Rights. I will share that as well. It is similar in a lot of ways, but it is not really, it is not, there's no post non-bold text of like, as a means to treat weight loss for all of the things. I mean, that's really what's so deceptive and troubling about all of these things is because it seems like, oh, they're finally trying to be nice to fat people. And it's always as a means to, treat weight loss. But it sounds like I hear the eagles crying.
Oh, yes. Let's do it.
With some advice. It's Fat Watch 2024. We're soaring. We're scooting. We're a little tense.
I love this Fat Watch, and I love anything to do with Zack Miko.
Zack Miko is here to help us out with a great
who is Zack Miko?
He is a plus-size male model, and this is a video from his Instagram channel where he's very active, and he's sharing an experience he had on several sets of being a model and having direction aimed at him, which says, suck in your gut.
Yeah. It's not like it's happened one time. He gets it consistently.
Yeah. It's
and he's like, okay, dude, he's like, dude, I'm always sucking in my gut.
There is never a moment in my life where I am not sucking it in. And he said, I think it's really interesting because he shows you, he's like, here's me not sucking my gut in. And he sort of lets it all hang out. And then he sucks it in. And he's like, he made a funny comment, which was when he let it out, he was like, it feels wrong to me. My lungs have too much room to expand.
Yeah. Yes, I love that.
Which is a great way to describe that.
my lungs have too much room. I must stop this now. What I love about this is he makes the point that, it's if you are the person who doesn't feel comfortable just letting their abdominal muscles relax and looking like that, then, that's fine. Like, suck it in, don't suck it in. Nobody has the right to tell you what to do, how to stand. Yeah. And I love the way he followed it up with, because you don't have to adjust your body to make other people comfortable.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a really positive message. I also like this snarkiness of like, he leans in, he's like, you don't have to tell fat people how to try and be smaller. We already know.
Yeah. We've been doing that since we were born. Yeah.
God, yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing is, by the way, if you haven't subscribed to his Instagram or whatever, it is so worth it. He gives really great tips. He gives really great insights. He is not bad to look at. He's gorgeous.
Yeah.
So he just has a lot of great tips. I think he is, he's a model, and you don't think of models like moving the needle in terms of activism or social justice, but damn, he's doing some good work.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I didn't realize this. He's got 121,000 followers on Instagram. Like, he's not just some, 10 or 15,000 people who like to follow. Like he's, those are legit numbers, which is really cool to see.
And there are definitely other plus size male models to follow. You absolutely should and can. And he just happens to be the one who's working, I think, hardest and having most of this message about like talking to his fans about issues that he has and they probably have.
Mm-hmm.
I know I really related to that. And I think as just a generally anxious, former anxious chubby child, I am always holding my breath and just kind of clenching.
Mm-hmm.
The point to where when I'm relaxed, Dan will be like, relax. You have to, like when he's Dan's helping with my shoes. It's like, no, you need to relax. It's like, I am relaxed.
Yeah.
This is relaxed.
It's like, that's my secret, Captain. I'm never relaxed.
Yes. Right. I found this also very relatable because I am also of the exact same ilk where I've been sucking it in since as long as I can remember. I genuinely like childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Don't remember when that started. And in the last year have kind of really come to direct terms with that and have had to kind of like work. Like, I feel like I feel less anxious and less tense, literally and figuratively, like mentally tense when I'm not sucking
it can make quite a change, can't it?
Well, I mean,
it's really interesting.
I mean, Zach hits it right on the head when he says like, oh my God, my lungs have so much more room to breathe.
Yeah.
How about breathing as a way of relaxing?
Well, they are correlated. That's part of it. That's part of it. Cause I find that when I am especially stressed, but I think just generally in life, I notice myself barely breathing. Like I just have the shallowest of tiny little breaths. And then I realize especially I haven't played soccer in a really long time. And so if I'm not in a very active mode where I'm actually forcing my lungs to take in big breaths and expand, I realize when I do that, I have to fight to expand my lungs that much because I'm just taking these tiny little anxiety breaths.
Mm-hmm.
Let's all take a breath and gather around. We're going to the carpet. Because it's story time.
Story time.
Crisscross applesauce. Get a pillow. Get a little stuffy.
That's right.
And we have stories.
Yes.
We do have stories. So Dan and Trevor have just come back from their cruise. They have fun cruising stories to share.
I can't wait to hear them.
Yes. I'm excited too. I feel like you guys should start us off.
Oh gosh. Which story to tell first?
I'll start off because I think Dan has a lot of kind of chaser technique stories.
Ooh.
This trip inspired me to write the chaser workout plan because how you need to be in shape and stronger to help your fat boy. And the other one is just
emergency
tips.
Drills.
Right. And the other is just there's just so many things that because we're not at home. Right. And so I think at home, it's not like I don't do these things, but on a cruise ship, you're in a new environment, but you're in that environment for a straight week or even longer sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's stuff that comes. How do you do that? Where do you put things? How do you, but yeah, the chaser workout plan, I think is next on my to-do list as a writing project.
I like it.
So I guess I had a lot of encounters with people, which were mostly positive. And it was, there was a bunch of, 90 something big fat gay guys and some chasers, encouragers thrown in there. So a noticeable group, lots of people asking about are you all part of a group or something?
To be fair, not only are we two to three times the size individually of everybody else on the ship, but we're also we're in an area of the dining area of the main dining hall. We're clearly a group.
Yes,
yeah, it's a community event.
Yeah.
So a couple people asking this question. Usually at times when I'm kind of stressed out and we're trying to get off the ship for an excursion or something. And there was a point where we were waiting for an elevator for our excursion in San Juan. We were doing a tour, and there's a woman in a scooter and her friend. And she's like, "Oh, are you part of a group?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's a bunch of big fat gay guys and their admirers." And someone's like, oh, she's like, I can't remember exactly how she said it, but she's like, oh, I date bigger guys. And her friend is like, oh yeah. She's like, I don't skinny dip, I chunky dunk.
That's a great phrase.
Episode title. Thank you, lady.
And I was just so excited. And she's like, oh, are y'all from San Francisco? Which I thought
it was, you're gay. You must be from San Francisco.
But then she also asked, like, oh, do you know so-and-so? Which I don't remember the name. I did not recognize the name. And I was telling everyone about it later. I'm like, oh my God. I finally found female fat admirers in the wild. And I was describing them and someone was like, oh my God. She's like, that's the woman who was taking pictures of everyone at the pool. And she seemed like she was really excited.
Women have spank banks too.
Yes, it's not just the men who are creepers
for her. She got more than she bargained for in the best possible way on that cruise.
Yep.
And it was just so exciting. And we saw them a couple other times.
Just picturing these poor women being like, why are all the good ones like...
Why are they all gay? Yeah.
Why are all the fat ones gay? Is this the new term that's going to replace chubby chaser? Is chunky dunker?
I hope not. Look, chubby chaser's not great, but that's worse.
That's not okay.
That's worse.
I don't know. I think it's going to give chubby chaser a run for its money.
Another term that I think was supposed to be a slur or like a clever slur was
oh yeah.
So there frequently with cruises there will be like an official Facebook group so people can like meet each other or ask questions or whatever. And one of my friends was in the group and shared a post it was a woman sharing pictures from the end of her trip. And she's like, oh, just some photos of, the ship. And someone replied, oh, nice pictures, but you're missing the Teletubby convention.
Which was us.
Yeah. Which it's like, I was like, really, like, then like racking my brain. I'm like, is it, so it's Teletubby because, Tubby and because the Teletubbies are gay? Because there was that whole thing about like
the whole
being
like
gay.
I don't think it's that deep. I just think they were looking for a word that used a phrase with tubby.
They didn't do a very good job.
No, but come on.
Were they drunk too?
No, in case you're not picturing this, it's a Facebook group for people on the ship at the time.
Yeah, so for all the people.
For all the people, right?
Yeah.
So, and here's the other thing too, is you're missing the Teletubby convention. It also signals that we were noticed and we were missed. Like, how come you didn't take pictures of them? So, I mean, I don't know. I sort of see it as a backhanded form of, inclusion. But
I'm not sure she like missed it. Like she wished you had been in there. I think she was more pointing out that there were some obvious exclusions.
Yeah. Which,
I'm gonna show you a picture of this woman because I feel like it really just encapsulates. Like this is her Facebook profile picture, and
this is the person who said Teletubbies.
Yes, and it really just shows it like everything you need to know about this woman.
All right, let's see it.
Oh yeah, boy,
that is a Karen grown up.
Oh my God,
that
is the queen of the Karens.
You know what? I just realized. She looks like Donald Trump.
Yes, she does.
Oh my God.
Yes,
she totally does. Oh my God. She is Donald Trump in drag.
Yeah, that's Donald Trump in drag. Yeah.
And that actually sounds like something Donald Trump would say, like, oh, those, like if he knew about the podcast, oh, the Teletubby podcast. Those Teletubbies.
Yeah, that's, oh my God, I can't. Yeah, that's it. That's it. 100%. Maybe she got her hairstyling tips because she has that kind of like leathery orange look too.
Yeah, she has leathery orange skin and she has this wispy, overprocessed hair. Yeah.
And her name was Christy, and just like
of course it was.
When someone posted that, like in the cruise, our cruise group. I just replied with her picture, like, you got Christied.
Because it'll be at least 10 or 20 years before there are Tiffany's who look like that.
Oh, boy. Don, do you want to go next or should I go next?
You go ahead.
All right. I had a few ideas, and I think maybe one I'll just save for like a main subject later on. But one of them, I have two. I have two little sort of shorter stories. One, so I got my hair cut, like big old haircut, short hair now. And I went to a new hairdresser because the woman who had been doing my longer hairstyle is pregnant and is on maternity leave. And so the new hairdresser is a fat woman, younger than I am. I think she's like in her young to mid 20s. And we were talking. And so my partner, Michael, also goes to the same hair salon, but we've never gone at the same time. And so apparently when Michael was there after I got my hair cut, he heard two of them talking about the makeover guy, because I had my hair cut so short that they were referring to me as the makeover guy. And he mentioned that I was his partner. And so when I went back for my next haircut, she was like, "You buried the lead. You didn't tell me that you had that was your guy." And she was like super nice. And I was like, "Oh, this is great." And we started talking. We had this amazing conversation. I was there for like a 30-minute haircut, and I was there for a solid hour, like, because we were talking about like fatness and living life as a fat person. And she didn't know I did the podcast. And so, you know, she was talking about like, she's trying to be healthier. And we went into this whole, like, you know, health isn't fat, like they're not synonymous, and had like, and so I was just like, it felt really good to just feel educated. Like I was like, I can actually speak to this because we've spent 4 years like talking about and learning about all of these subjects, and then getting to share that with her, and not just to like, you know, in giant air quotes, educate her. Like, I don't think I needed to be there to do that. It was more her seeing someone who looked like me being an ally and an advocate made her day. Because she didn't, even though I have a fat partner, that wasn't necessarily going to be the conversation. And she was just like, by the end of that conversation, she was just like glowing. We had a great time. I shared the tip, you know, I couched it. I was like, you know, in case you had not heard this already, I think this is a good tip about dealing with your doctor when they're refusing to treat your actual symptoms. They're saying just lose weight. And I was like, yeah, tell the doctor to write in your chart that they're refusing to treat these symptoms. And she was like, oh my God, that's like a really good idea.
Yeah.
I'm going to try that. And so it's like, I don't know, it felt so gratifying to have an in-person interaction with a total, like, you know, civilian stranger, and to get to like actually share all of this stuff that we talk about every week. It was very, very cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Yay. The second one I have is just like a very short, easy thing. I started playing a video game called The Ghost of Tsushima, and it came out a few years ago. I just picked it up, and there's a character in there who is a fat character, and so far, I haven't come across a single fat stereotype. He has a dramatic storyline. He's a warrior monk, and his brother was killed, and so he joins your character on the quest to kind of take the island back. And I looked it up because I was curious. They have a Japanese voice actor and an English, I think, American voice actor. Both of the voice actors are also fat.
Oh, wow.
Oh. And I was like, this is really cool. Like, and the model of the character in the game is named Norio. Looks to me, it looks a lot like the English voice actor, whose name is Earl T. Kim. And the Japanese voice actor, I'm sure I'll get this pronunciation terribly, terribly wrong, but Mitsuaki Kanuka. Just really, really cool to sort of stumble across a fat character. And I was instantly like, oh my God, this is, you know, bracing for the fat jokes, because game is great otherwise. And you just don't want to get slimed when you're having a good time. And he had like this just real dramatic storyline that had nothing to do with being fat. He was just a fat character.
You were candied.
I was candied. Yeah. And so, yay.
You hardly ever see that, especially in video games. Especially in video games.
Yeah.
Which is weird because, like, you know, stereotypically, that's the home of fat people. Like, we're supposed to be playing video games, right? Be nice to us. We're your audience.
Right. We're your target demographic, jerks.
For my story, it's similar to Michael's story. My journey in the podcast has been one of like personal examination, right? Like that's part of my reason for being here, right? And sort of assessing what being fat has done to my brain over my lifetime. How has it affected the way I interact with people? How it affects how I see myself, right? And now it's interesting for me to get into these conversations with, I don't know what to call them, the newly fat, right?
Okay.
People who have gotten fatter either post-COVID or because of certain life changes, or they've gotten older, and now they're discovering life on the other side of the coin, right? And for some reason, a lot of them have found me recently, and I've been chatting with them. And I was chatting with this woman who, talking with her underscored how far I've come in my own thinking, even though I don't always feel like it, right? There are times when I feel like I could be overly down on myself for stupid reasons, for stuff we've talked about 1,000 times. But then talking with her about the concepts, like what you were talking about with your hairdresser, Michael, on like her sort of realizing for the first time, like, oh, I could ask my doctor to take me seriously and actually like make notes that he's not taking me seriously in my chart, right?
Yeah.
Shit like that, where like she didn't have a comprehension that she could be physically attractive as a larger, like it was just it just wasn't even in the realm of possibility.
Yep.
You know, the concept that, okay, I guess I just have to dress schlubby now because that's what's available to me. Like all of these things that we've gotten used to, that we've overcome, that we've fought, that have been like in the rear view mirror seem surmountable, right? It's interesting for me to start encountering people that are still at that starting point, that these first steps are still so hard on. And, you know, it gives you your own yardstick of how far you've come. And for those of you who are working on like things like self-esteem, or, you know, trying to find space for you in a world when you feel like it's not given to you, right? After you've done the work, take some time every once in a while to breathe and see how far you've come and appreciate the journey, because you won't notice it unless you make the effort. And that was very worth it for me.
Yeah.
So
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah. So for my story, I learned so much about wheelchairs, especially wheelchairs that one is given to use in places like airports. I know so much about that now. And in fact, that's going to be our tip a little bit later on.
Okay.
So, you know, Trevor, you know, he's plenty mobile. He's more limber than I am, but you know, getting these long haul distances in big airports, I'd say that's a lot for you, Trevor. That's a lot for you, Trevor. Yeah.
Well, and it's so unknown depending on the airport.
And even when it's a not so enormous airport, we seem to be at the gate at the end of whatever terminal we go. Oh my God, it's forever.
I'm pretty sure they screen for fat people and move the planes to the farthest
I think they
point.
do. Like, oh, there's more fat people in this flight. Let's put it way out there. They need the exercise. So, and LaGuardia just did a whole remodel, and it's gorgeous. But one of the things they did was they made the terminals enormously, like there's actually, you have to go over this massive bridge to get to the new terminal. It's like a satellite terminal, but instead of taking a bus to it, you walk in a walkway to it. So anyway, the distances are massive. And we've been encountering this. We've been at several airports now. And so I am the expert now in airport wheelchairs and how to transport. Because usually between the two of us, we have 6 pieces of luggage, which includes Trevor's CPAP. So there's like 4 for Trevor and 2 for me. But anyway, so just getting, and how do you get these? And yes, it's getting a wide wheelchair, but a wide wheelchair, you know how a lot of clothing isn't really designed for fat people. It's just been sized up. Like it's a 32, but okay, so I guess you need a 64. Like it's just been, everything's been expanded. It doesn't fit anybody. It doesn't
just double it.
Just double it. And there's a lot of wheelchairs. So like the wide wheelchairs, they're not really designed to handle the weight of that width. And so the wheels are pushing in, and there was one wheelchair we pushed. Okay, this is the story. There's this one wheelchair, and I'm having a horrendous time with it because we are, I think it was even on, there's a difference between pushing a wheelchair on carpet and pushing a wheelchair on just flat tile floor. But this was, I think it was flat, but the wheel was out of alignment. And so it's creating extra friction. And then it starts pushing against the side of the chair. Oh, yeah. And so I'm a pretty strong guy. So I'm using a lot of force to get Trevor down this walkway, and it's generating more and more friction to the point that it is heating the metal on that side of the chair to the point where it's burning Trevor's thigh.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Wow. That takes a lot of force and a lot of diligence, but I did it.
Good job.
Good job. And so we would have to take breaks, one for my right arm, because my left arm is doing almost nothing. That's effortless. My right arm is pushing as hard as it can because it's trying to overcome the friction.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And then we also have to break because, Trevor needs time to cool off his thigh on that side.
To blow out the fire.
You need to get a water-cooled wheelchair.
No, I'm sorry. A wheelchair should not be designed such that it needs a heat shield. This is not Apollo 1 re-entering. But luckily, we have a solution, dear listener.
Yes.
We have found, or I should say Trevor has found. So we were at the airport, and there's actually a wheelchair system that is perfect. It even has a little cubby underneath it, so you can put a backpack, maybe even a suitcase. And it is made by a company called Staxi Wheelchairs.
Like taxi with an S on the front.
Yeah, yes. Exactly right. So taxi with an S. So and because they do not collapse like a wheelchair, but they do stack like shopping carts.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
right. And they are the best design ever. I push Trevor effortlessly with these things.
Mm-hmm.
They're really great. And assuming that, and they even have a program. If you travel a lot with airports, get your airport to get one of these things. They have a low cost replacement program where they'll credit you. You give them a wheelchair, they'll give you one of their Staxis. And so it's a way of phasing them in at so that there's not a huge capital outlay for the airport or the museum. Like they'd be great at museums. Yeah. Any place you need a public wheelchair, you use a Staxi. It's fantastic. They should be paying me to say this. I'm just so
we need to get a sponsorship.
I was talking to Dan about how do we donate these to places we want to go? Like LACMA. How do I contact LACMA? I would like to donate one of these systems to you because it's just so amazing, and they have different models, and their base level holds up to 600 pounds. Their heavy duty model holds 800 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Which is just so amazing. Unusual. This is such an unusual accommodation.
Yeah, and it's built sensically. It's engineered really well so that the weight is over the back wheels and the front wheels are free to move, which sounds like just a regular wheelchair too. But the wheels are small and they're maneuverable, and they're not made of these pneumatic tubes that just there's another friction thing I have to overcome, is because Trevor crushes the wheels on the regular wheelchair.
I just want to say, in this whole discussion of the wheelchairs and Trevor on the wheelchair, I've been imagining Trevor is sitting on a wheelchair that has little 4-inch tall wheels and then using his 2 fingers to push the board daintily roll forward.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like that.
So anyway, I have a lot of opinions. And by the way, if you think about where wheelchair grips are, they're these two little rods that come out of the back of the wheelchair. Towards you. You know what I'm talking about, right? If you've ever seen a wheelchair, certainly if you've pushed a wheelchair, you know that your hands are in this weird position, which is horrible if you're moving a lot of weight, right? You want a bar, right?
Yeah.
You want a
they're
bar
just angled, they're
push.
90-degree turn. Just turn them the other way.
Yeah. So, of course, the Staxis have this, and they have a braking system that is not based on friction, but based on gearing. I love these things so much.
I mean, so that was going to kind of be a tip, but I guess another tip / story is we did an accessible tour in San Juan, which was good. It was fine. They did not really account for I was trying to figure out how do I communicate to these cruise companies that size accessible is a thing.
Yeah. The point you were making is that accessible usually to them just means, does the van have space for a wheelchair? And that's really not nearly enough.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Because Trevor doesn't need to take a wheelchair on the tour, but he'll need 2 seats,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I couldn't sit with him. And
anyway, we ended up, just because of the lack of options for tours, when we went to St. Thomas, we did a private tour, which we used an outside excursion company and basically hired, it was someone with a van will take you around and give you a tour. And we told them hey, one of us is very fat and needs, we'll have some issues with distances, and to let them know. So it's not I don't know, a motorbike with a sidecar as the vehicle.
No, it was really great because it was a native, someone who was born and raised on the island. No, he didn't have a history degree, so we didn't have that aspect, but we had like the sort of the real world, like this is what we're dealing with today. And, when I grew up, that was the high school I went to, and really, really cool stuff. And it was just, I think it was just we two in an SUV.
Yes.
Oh, cool.
And it was, with cruises, there's the whole thing, depending on when you buy it, you get different deals, but we paid basically the same amount for the two of us to do that tour as we did for the accessible tour.
Yeah.
And I think it is a great way to find, size accessibility when you're traveling and want to do a tour is
nice.
I booked it through Viator, which is through, I guess it's a TripAdvisor company, but there's lots of different ways to do that. And I suggest people do that when they travel.
Yeah. Because you'll get exactly what you want. It will accommodate you. And the party is only as big as you want to invite friends. Like if you just want, just you, that's fine. You can do that.
All right. Do we have a un bit for today?
We do have a bit today. Since we had talked earlier in the episode about the Obesity Bill of Rights, I thought, we have some perspective on the things that we should have the right to do in the doctor's office. So we should have our Big Fat Gay Podcast list of rights. And so I thought each of us should contribute a little something. What is a right that you should have in the doctor's office when you go?
I have kind of a facetious one.
Okay.
I mean, it's serious and facetious. So mine is the right to have your body shape described not as a disease, but simply as your body, like any other.
That's very controversial, Michael.
I know, but look, I came out swinging.
Yeah.
I think that's just base level, entry level.
I have one.
Yeah.
Or at least a strongly worded suggestion. That to just get rid of the weigh-ins. Every time you go to the doctor, the nurse, weighs you. Get rid of it unless it comes up in the consultation that you're going to be prescribed something and the doctor has a doubt about the dosage, which he or she would need body weight for. So unless it becomes medically necessary, just get rid of the medical weighing.
I like that. I like that. Yeah.
I wouldn't mind it.
I don't really know how to phrase this as a thing, but we need to talk about furniture in doctors' offices.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Just in general.
Yes.
And we need to completely rethink this. I mean, if you are someone who is a doctor who is going to have the nerve to tell someone to lose weight or just be like, oh, well, maybe it's because you're fat. Just any doctor, no armchairs in waiting rooms. We as a society have evolved beyond the need for armchairs anywhere, but especially doctors' offices.
It's weird. I go to Cedars for most of my medical stuff, and I'd say half the doctors I see there have wide chairs, which just points out the ones that don't. It makes it that much clearer.
Yeah. But it's odd though, isn't it? Isn't it, Don, that even those wide chairs have arms?
Yes. Yeah. You could eliminate the need for a lot of them if you just, I believe that we should be allowed, should the doctor break any of those rules or come into question of any of them, we may continue the appointment with their testicles in our hands. And if they displease us again, we may do with those testicles as we wish.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Assuming
I think
the doctor
that would
has,
cut down on some of the bullshit that I've had to deal with.
Assuming the doctor has testicles. Yeah. I would also
replace testicles with genitalia.
Okay.
No,
you're not making this better.
Well, dear listener, do you have another right that you believe we should all have at the medical professional's office? Trevor, where could they tell us about it?
Well, listener, we're on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. That's at Big Fat Gay Pod. Ooh, I haven't done this in a minute. Where it's it's just all
we
out of
broke
this.
Trevor.
We're on Facebook as the Big Fat Gay Podcast. Leave us 5 stars there. Leave us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, any of your preferred listening podcast platforms. YouTube Music now, I guess. Support us on Patreon at patreon.com/bigfatgaypod. See the articles we talked about at www.bigfatgaypod.com, baby.
Don't forget to send us those Valentine's Day letters.
Valentine's Day questions.
I flubbed it, but I nailed it. I nailed the landing, sort of. Maybe you're writing Valentine's and you think of an idea to send to us. Ooh. But you hear a little knocking at your window, and it's Michael. He's a little cherub. He's Cupid, but he's got a bow and arrow. So
watch out. I'm gonna get you.
To Photoshop that now. That might have that's gonna be the Valentine's Day episode little picture.
Oh,
this little blurry cherub Michael.
Do you have a picture of him in a diaper?
Nobody does.